I am standing in the doorway of my house, and I already know something is wrong. The air smells different. Not wood dust, not oil, not the sharp, honest scent of work. It smells like baby powder. I don't move at first. My bag slips from my hand and hits the floor, but I barely hear it. My eyes are locked on the end of the hallway, on the door that used to lead to my workshop. My life's work. My hands are shaking as I walk toward it. Every step feels slow, like my body is warning me, like it's begging me to turn around. I open the door. The room is pink. Not just painted, transformed. Soft walls, a crib where my workbench used to be, a rocking chair sitting on the exact spot where I carved my first commissioned piece. Shelves full of plush toys, stuffed animals smiling at me like they know something I don't. My tools are gone. All of them. Years of precision, decades of mastery, every chisel sharpened by my own hand, every saw balanced just right, every machine I saved for, repaired, trusted. Gone. I remember my knees hitting the floor. I remember the sound I made, something between a gasp and a laugh, because my brain refused to accept it. And that's when I realized this wasn't a mistake. This was a decision. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal. And if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button, because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. I had been gone for 6 months. 6 months on a restoration contract overseas. Old buildings, sacred work, the kind of craftsmanship that still respected hands like mine. It paid well. It had to, because when you're a master carpenter, people don't just pay for wood, they pay for judgment. Before I left, I locked my workshop myself. I remember checking the hinges. I remember oiling the latch. I remember thinking, this room will outlast me. I trusted my family to respect that. I was wrong. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who thought trust was permanent just because blood was involved. Story after story, different faces, same ending. But back then, standing in that doorway, I still believed there had to be an explanation, a reasonable one. I walked through the nursery like a stranger. My fingers brushed the crib rail. Solid wood, oak, expensive, custom. Someone had paid for this. Someone had planned it. I opened every cabinet, every drawer, hoping stupidly to find one tool left behind, a clamp, a tape measure, anything to prove this wasn't deliberate. Nothing. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. My daughter. She froze when she saw me on the floor, her face drained of color. For a split second, I saw it. Not surprise, not confusion, fear. "Dad?" she said softly, like volume could undo what she'd done. You're home early." I stood up slowly. My knees felt weak, but my voice didn't. "Where are my tools?" She swallowed, looked away. That told me everything. "They're safe," she said. Safe. That word hit harder than any insult. "Where?" I asked. She hesitated too long. "That's not what I asked," I said, quieter now. Dangerous quiet. "Where are my tools?" She started crying, and in that moment, something inside me broke, not loudly, not dramatically, but cleanly, like a joint snapping under pressure. My wife came running in, took one look at the room, took one look at me. She didn't ask how the job went. She didn't say welcome home. She said we needed the space. Needed. As if need gave permission. I remember staring at her, searching for the woman I married, the one who watched me bleed into wood, the one who understood that my workshop wasn't a room, it was an extension of my hands. "You sold them," I said. She didn't deny it. That was the second break. "They were just tools," she replied, "and we needed the money." Just tools. I laughed then, a dry, ugly sound. Those tools fed this family. Those tools paid for this house. Those tools paid for that nursery. Silence. Heavy. Thick. My daughter wiped her face. "Dad, we didn't have a choice." That sentence is how people justify anything. I walked past them without another word and went to the garage. Maybe they moved some things there. Maybe this was all half done. Maybe empty, clean, swept. They had erased me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table staring at old calluses on my hands, hands trained for weight and resistance, hands that now felt useless. Around 2 a.m., I opened my laptop. I didn't know what I was looking for. Proof, lies, answers. I checked our shared accounts, and that's when the numbers stopped making sense. Withdrawals I didn't recognize, transfers I didn't authorize, small at first, then bigger, then desperate. I pulled credit reports. Loans. Multiple, taken out in my name. My chest tightened. Not anger yet, something colder. I scrolled through months of transactions, payments to places I'd never been, people I didn't know. This wasn't about a baby. This was about something else, something hidden. At dawn, I heard the nursery door open, soft humming. My wife rocking an empty chair, practicing motherhood in a room built on my ruin. I stood behind her and said one sentence. "How much do we owe?" She stiffened, didn't turn around, and that's when I knew. The workshop wasn't converted out of love. It was converted out of panic, because they hadn't just sold my tools. They had been running from something, and whatever it was coming for all of us. My wife didn't answer at first. The rocking chair creaked, back and forth, slow, controlled, like she thought rhythm could hold the truth in place. "How much do we owe?" I repeated. She finally turned toward me. Her eyes were red, but not surprised. That hurt more than the tears. "It's complicated," she said. That's when I knew the number was big. Complicated is what people say when the truth is ugly and expensive. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. My hands were flat on the table, steady, calm, too calm. "Start talking," I said. "Now." She looked past me, toward the hallway, toward the room that used to be my soul. "It started small," she said. "Medical bills, then the interest, then—" "Whose medical bills?" I cut in. She closed her eyes. "Our daughter. Not the baby. The grown one. The one standing in the doorway, listening." I turned and looked at her. She flinched like I'd raised my hand. "What happened?" I asked. She shook her head. "I didn't want you to worry. You were away. The job was important." I felt something twist in my chest. Important doesn't mean disposable. Not to me. My wife exhaled. Long, heavy. She needed help. Fast help. Private help. Private. That word matters. "What kind of help?" I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. Then she said it. "Gambling." The room went quiet. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The hollow eyes, the way she couldn't meet my gaze, the way her hands kept fidgeting like they needed something to grip. "How much?" I asked. She whispered it. A number so large my brain rejected it at first, like a foreign language. "That's not possible," I said. She nodded anyway, tears streaming now. "I thought I could win it back." That sentence again. I stood up so fast the chair fell over behind me. "You took loans in my name," I said, each word precise. "You sold my tools. You erased my livelihood because you thought you could beat the odds." My wife stood too. She was scared. They were threatening her. That made me stop. "Who?" I asked. My daughter's voice was barely audible. "People." That's when the fear finally arrived. Not sharp, heavy, settling. "Who people?" I said. She shook her head. "You don't understand. It's not just cards. It's not just machines. It's—" "Stop," I snapped. "You don't get to protect them anymore." Silence. Then my wife said something that chilled me. "They already came by once." I felt my stomach drop. "When?" I asked. "2 weeks ago," she said. "2 men, polite, smiling. They asked about you." That word again. You. "They knew my name?" I asked. She nodded. "They knew where you were working," she added. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a family secret. It was a business transaction, and I was the collateral. I went back to the laptop, opened every file, every statement, every email. I started building a timeline like I would a piece of furniture, carefully, methodically, no wasted movement. Patterns emerged. The tools were sold in batches, not random, strategic, the most valuable ones first, the ones hardest to replace. Someone knew what they were doing. "Who bought them?" I asked. My wife hesitated. "A dealer." "What dealer?" She gave me a name. I knew it, not personally, but by reputation. A man who bought stolen equipment and resold it overseas, clean enough to avoid jail, dirty enough to ruin lives. I put my jacket on. "Where are you going?" my wife asked. "To see if my life is still for sale," I replied. The dealer's warehouse sat at the edge of the industrial zone. Corrugated steel, no sign, no cameras visible, but I knew better. I walked in like I belonged there. That's another thing craftsmanship teaches you. Confidence opens doors faster than force. The man behind the desk smiled when he saw me. "You were just who I was wondering when you'd show up," he said. That sentence confirmed everything. "You knew they were mine," I said. He shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Bills were paid, contracts signed." "I want them back," I said. He laughed, actually laughed. "Those tools are already gone," he replied. "Different countries, different buyers." My jaw tightened. "Who told you to take them?" I asked. He leaned forward, lowered his voice. "You should ask your family who they owe. I'm just the middleman." I left before I did something irreversible. On the drive home, I realized something terrifying. The nursery wasn't built for a baby. It was built to distract me, to soften me, to make me emotional instead of rational. They didn't just betray my trust, they underestimated my mind. That night, I pulled out an old notebook, one I hadn't touched in years. Inside were names, clients, contractors, favors owed, people who knew me as more than a father, people who knew what my hands could build and what my silence was worth. By midnight, I had my first lead, a payment routed through a shell account, not gambling related, something else, something darker. And as I closed the notebook, I understood one final truth. My workshop wasn't taken because they needed space. It was taken because someone wanted me powerless. And I was done being polite. I didn't tell them what I was doing. That was intentional. When trust is broken, silence becomes a tool. I left the house before sunrise. The nursery light was on again. Someone rocking. Someone pretending everything could still be normal if they repeated the motion enough times. I drove to a cafe I used to meet clients in. Neutral ground. No cameras inside. Cash-only register. The kind of place where conversations stayed buried. The owner saw me and froze. "You look thinner," he said. "You look older," I replied. We both knew what that meant. I ordered black coffee and took the corner seat. 10 minutes later, a man sat across from me without asking. Jonah, former logistics, former problems. A man who knew how money moved when it didn't want to be seen. "You don't call unless something's wrong," he said. "My life's been sold in pieces," I replied. "I want to know who bought it." He didn't smile. "That dealer?" he asked. "He doesn't move things like that without a reason." I slid the notebook across the table, open, highlighted. "Shell account," I said. "This payment doesn't match the gambling pattern." Jonah scanned it once. That was enough. "This isn't debt," he said. "This is leverage." My fingers tightened around the cup. "Explain." He leaned back. "She needed liquidity fast. Tools are easy to move, hard to trace, especially if they're custom." "They were mine," I said. "Which makes them valuable," he replied, "and makes you valuable." That word again. I asked the question I'd been avoiding. Who benefits from me being stripped clean? Jonah looked at me for a long moment. "Who have you said no to?" he asked. That brought memories back like splinters. Contracts I refused, renovations I walked away from, projects where corners were demanded, and I wouldn't cut them. "I don't compromise," I said. "That's expensive for the wrong people." He tapped the notebook. "This account routes through a development firm," he continued. "Front company, real estate, big money." Real estate. My chest tightened. "Where?" I asked. He gave me an address. I recognized it instantly. A half-finished complex downtown, luxury condos, cheap materials disguised as premium work. I had turned that job down 3 years ago. They wanted my name, my reputation. I wouldn't give it. Now they wanted something else. I drove there without thinking. The site was quiet, too quiet. No workers, no noise, just scaffolding and silence. I walked through the skeleton of the building, my footsteps echoing. I could see every flaw, every rushed joint, every hidden weakness. This place was going to fail, and they knew it. That's why they needed me gone. I took photos, measurements, notes, habit, muscle memory. Then I heard voices. 2 men, suits, not construction. I stepped back into the shadows. "They sold everything," one said. "He's finished." "Not yet," the other replied. "He hasn't signed." I held my breath. "He won't," the first said. "He's proud." "That's why we used his family," the second replied. My jaw locked. "They're scared," the voice continued. "He'll break." That was the moment something hardened in me permanently. I walked out before they saw me. Back home, I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I started rebuilding. Not the workshop, my leverage. I called old clients, quietly, carefully, asked questions instead of favors. By evening, I had confirmation. The debts weren't just gambling, they were payments, monthly, consistent. My daughter hadn't fallen into trouble. She'd been recruited. threatened, used. I finally sat her down, alone. "No lies," I said. "This is your last chance." She broke. "They said you ruined them," she sobbed. "They said you owed them, that if you didn't help, they'd come after you." "Who?" I asked. She gave me a name, the developer, the same one. "They wanted you desperate. They wanted you to sign off on the build, stamp it safe." I closed my eyes. That signature would have killed people. "That nursery," I said slowly. "Whose idea was it?" She looked down. "Theirs." The room spun. They didn't just take my tools, they staged a lie inside my home. That night I packed a bag. I wasn't running, I was preparing, because now I knew the truth. This wasn't a family betrayal, it was a setup, and the people behind it thought I was just a carpenter. They had no idea what I could build with nothing left to lose. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, because anger is loud, and I needed silence. I drove before dawn to a place I hadn't visited in years, an old woodworking guild hall on the edge of the city. No sign, no website, just a locked door and a reputation. I knocked 3 times. The man who opened it stared at my empty hands. "Where are your tools?" he asked. "Taten," I replied. He stepped aside anyway. Inside, the smell hit me immediately. Wood, oil, time, honest work. My chest tightened for the first time since I came home. Men looked up from benches. Some nodded. Some froze. Everyone recognized me. A master without his tools is still a master. "I need access," I said. No questions. One of them slid a key across the table. No clock, no names. That was enough. I worked for 12 hours straight. Borrowed tools, unfamiliar weight, different balance. It didn't matter. Skill adapts faster than fear. By nightfall, I had built something small. Not furniture. Evidence. A scaled model of the condo project. Every flaw highlighted, every stress point marked, load-bearing failures disguised behind pretty panels. I photographed everything. Then I sent one email, anonymous, clean, no trace. To the city inspector. Subject line, "This building will kill people." I went home after midnight. The house was quiet. The nursery light was off for the first time. I found my wife in the kitchen, sitting alone. "You know, don't you?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She nodded slowly. "They promised it would stop once you signed." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. "They used our child," I said, "and you let them." Her shoulders collapsed. "I thought I was protecting us," she whispered. "That's the lie they sell. Safety in exchange for silence." I walked past her. That hurt her more than yelling ever could. The next morning, the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "You're making noise," a man said calmly. "That's not smart." "Breaking buildings is louder," I replied. A pause. "You think inspectors matter?" he asked. "They do when the press is watching," I said. Another pause. Longer. "You want your tools back," he said. "I want my family out and your name off every document." He laughed softly. "You're in no position to negotiate." I smiled for the first time in days. "You're wrong," I said. "You're in a position to panic." I hung up. By evening, news vans were parked outside the condo site. Inspection halted. Permits frozen. Investors spooked. That night, someone tried to break into my house. They didn't expect me to be awake or waiting. I didn't chase them. I memorized them. Faces, walk, fear. The next day, Jonah called. "You just triggered a collapse," he said. "They're bleeding." "Good," I replied. "They'll come for you directly now." "I know," I said. And I was ready, because I had one final piece they didn't expect, a ledger hidden in the false bottom of a tool chest they missed, records of bribes, shortcuts, names. I uploaded copies to 3 places, scheduled releases, insurance. That night, I stood in the nursery, looked at the crib, and understood something painful. This room wasn't built for a child. It was built as a warning. But they miscalculated one thing. They thought taking my workshop would make me weak. They forgot something fundamental. A craftsman doesn't live in his tools. The tools live in him. And I was just getting started. I woke to a quiet house. Too quiet. No nursery light, no creaking floorboards, nothing. Just the hum of the heater and the steady tick of the clock. I knew they were moving, planning, watching, calculating. I made coffee, black, strong enough to make the day feel like something I could own instead of survive. The first call came at 8:03 a.m. A number blocked, no voice changer, just a man, calm, deliberate. "You've made this complicated," he said. "I've made it safe," I replied. Silence. Then, "Safety costs. Always. You think the inspector stopped anything? You just delayed the inevitable." I smiled, not out of humor, not even anger, but because I knew he underestimated me, again. "You're right about one thing," I said. "I delayed you, and that's all you got." He laughed, shallow, brittle. "Your family." I hung up. I didn't need threats. I didn't need fear. I needed facts, patterns, weaknesses. I spent the morning tracing every payment, every transaction, every signature connected to the shell accounts. Every trail led back to one central hub, the development firm, the same people who thought they could erase me. By noon, I had enough evidence to hit every regulatory body, every local authority, every bank that had been part of the chain. I didn't call my wife or my daughter, not yet. They had to see the consequences of their choices as clearly as I did. By late afternoon, emails, calls, and reports were flowing. Every line I sent carried my voice without my name. They panicked. Investors pulled back. The firm's executives were called into emergency meetings. Phone lines went dead. Security increased. But I stayed invisible. I walked past the nursery again that evening. The crib was empty. The rocking chair stood still. The walls glowed softly in the fading sun. I thought about the first night I saw it. The betrayal, the fear, the disbelief. And now I thought about power, quiet, unyielding power, the kind that builds slowly, with patience and precision, the kind that comes from knowing every corner, every flaw, every weakness, and striking exactly where it hurts most. My daughter approached me, hesitantly. "Dad," she said, "are they..." They're unraveling, I said. But you need to understand something. Her eyes, still filled with guilt, searched mine. Fear doesn't protect. Knowledge does. Patience does. Silence does. And mistakes cost people everything. She nodded, but the weight didn't lift. Because she was learning what I had learned the hard way. Betrayal isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's quiet, gentle, designed to lull you into trust before the blow lands. That night, I made a decision. The workshop wasn't coming back, not entirely, not yet. But the tools, my family, they would survive. And the people who thought they could take me down would soon understand one thing. You cannot erase a craftsman, not when he remembers every joint, every detail, every weakness in the world around him. And when he decides to strike, he builds a plan that no one sees coming. The next morning I woke before the sun. The air outside was sharp, cold enough to wake every sense, perfect for thinking, perfect for planning. I didn't check the nursery. I didn't check my phone. I walked straight to the garage. Empty, clean, the way they had left it. I breathed in, steady, and let my hands hover over nothing. Because a craftsman doesn't need tools to plan destruction. I started with maps, diagrams, notes from my past projects, every angle, every access point, every blind spot they had exploited. I drew a web of their operation, the development firm, their offshore accounts, the shell companies, the dealers, every thread connected to my stolen life. By noon, I had a plan precise enough to be surgical. Jonah called, his voice low, careful. "They're moving fast," he said. "You should hide." "I am already hiding in plain sight. They don't see me coming." "You're reckless," he warned. "You're not just fighting for money. This is bigger than you think." "I know," I said. And I did, because by that afternoon I had discovered something more than stolen tools and hidden debts. Contracts, illegally signed, fraudulent insurance claims, threats, bribes, a network designed to crush anyone who refused to comply. They hadn't just threatened me, they had built a machine to destroy lives. And I knew exactly where the first strike had to land. I started at the building site, not the condo, the main office, the heart of the operation. I walked through it like I owned it, because I did. Not legally, not yet, but I knew every weakness, every security blind spot, every overconfidence of men who thought their power untouchable. By evening, I had infiltrated the network. Emails scheduled, reports sent, calls made. Every executive thinking they were safe. Every middleman thinking they had control. Meanwhile, back home, the nursery became a silent reminder. Not of loss, not of betrayal, but of precision, focus, planning. My daughter watched me, her fear replaced by something like respect, or maybe understanding. "Dad," she whispered one night, "are you going to stop them?" I didn't answer immediately. I stared at her, the room, the empty crib, the stolen years, the risk we were all in. "Yes," I finally said, "but only when the time is right. Rushing is a mistake. Haste is weakness, and they have already underestimated me enough." The phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "You've made a lot of moves," a voice said, calm, controlled, but I could hear the underlying tension, fear maybe. "I've only started," I replied. A pause, then, "You don't know what you're dealing with." "Oh, I do," I replied. "You underestimated a man without his tools, without his workshop, without his family's trust. But you forgot one thing. I remember everything." Silence. Then finally the line went dead. I hung up and walked through the house. Every step a reminder, every room a map, every memory fuel. By midnight, my plan was in motion. I had secured whistleblowers, leaked critical files, traced funds, and exposed connections. The first dominoes were falling. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The developers were panicking, dealers were calling their contacts, lawyers were scrambling, and somewhere, deep in their offices, they were plotting retaliation. I wasn't afraid, because fear doesn't live in someone who has nothing left to lose. And by sunrise, they would realize that a master carpenter doesn't need his tools to dismantle empires. He only needs a plan. The next morning, the city felt different. Quiet, heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. I didn't go to the nursery. I didn't check the house. I went straight to the site where everything had begun, the half-finished luxury condos. The place reeked of arrogance, of men who thought power was permanent, of contractors who believed shortcuts were invisible. I walked past the security gates, pretending to be an inspector, my papers forged, my tone precise. Confidence isn't taught, it's commanded. They let me in. I smiled inside. Inside the building, chaos had already begun. Workers whispered, executives paced, phones rang constantly. Every plan they thought unshakable was crumbling. I walked to the site manager, a man with an expensive suit and cheap backbone. "Plans?" I asked. He handed me a folder. I flipped through it like I was reading a story I had written long ago. Every flaw, every miscalculation, every corner cut. And then I smiled, because every one of those mistakes would be used against them. I called Jonah. "They're unraveling," I said. "Good, but they'll come for you directly now. Be careful." "I am beyond careful," I said. Then I did something they never expected. I walked past the offices, past the cameras, past the security guards, and left a copy of the ledger, my secret weapon, on the desk of the lead developer. Names, accounts, payments, threats, bribes, every piece of evidence meticulously documented. By noon, the city's inspectors arrived. Authorities followed. Media vans appeared. Investors called lawyers. And in that chaos, I became invisible again. But I wasn't done. I drove to the dealer who had sold my tools. His warehouse was dark, but he knew I was coming. "Back for your toys?" he sneered. "They're not toys," I said, "and I don't need them to break you." He laughed, too loud, too confident. I placed a single USB drive on the desk. "Everything," I said. "The transactions, the buyers, the shell accounts, the development firm, all of it. Go ahead, check it." He did. His eyes widened. You can't," I smiled. I already did. He called someone. I left before the gun arrived. Back home, the nursery was still quiet. The empty crib cast long shadows in the evening light. I looked at my daughter. "They'll be gone soon," I said. "All of them." She nodded, tears still in her eyes, but not fear this time, understanding. That night, I sat at the kitchen table. My wife finally came to me. "You saved us," she whispered. I shook my head. "I saved them from themselves. You let fear control you. You let lies replace honesty. That almost cost us everything." She couldn't answer, because she knew. And I knew too, because tomorrow the firm would collapse, the dealers would panic, the city would know their corruption, and I would be standing unshaken. Because a craftsman doesn't need tools to rebuild his life. He only needs patience, precision, and revenge. By midnight, the first arrests were made. Officials arrived at the development firm. Evidence delivered anonymously was overwhelming. Shell accounts frozen, bribes exposed, loans reversed. They had underestimated me at every step. My family underestimated me, the dealers underestimated me, the executives underestimated me. And that was their final mistake. I stood in the nursery one last time before sunrise. The crib, the rocking chair, everything built on lies and fear. I ran my fingers over the wood, imagining every tool that had once shaped my life. I whispered to myself, almost as a prayer. "You thought you could erase me, but you can't erase a craftsman, not when he knows the bones of the world, not when he knows patience, precision, and revenge." The city felt quiet that morning. Not the soft quiet of peace, but the heavy quiet of inevitability. By sunrise, news had spread. The development firm, the shell companies, the dealers, they were all exposed. Bank accounts frozen, executives questioned, bribes documented, lies exposed to a public that couldn't look away. I didn't celebrate, not yet. I never do, because victory in silence is more powerful than noise. I walked into the nursery. The pink walls, the crib, the empty rocking chair, all reminders of how betrayal can masquerade as love. I sat down in the chair, letting it creak under me. My daughter came and sat across from me. My wife stood in the doorway, unsure. "I need you to understand something," I said softly. "This wasn't just about stolen tools or hidden debts or even threats. It was about trust and how easily we give it away." My daughter nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. "I understand," she whispered. "You understand, but you also have to remember," I said. "Fear can make people do things they shouldn't. Lies can feel safe, but both are dangerous. And betrayal is never simple. It changes everything." My wife took a step forward. "I thought I was protecting us," she said. "I didn't see the bigger picture." I looked at her, calm now, the storm inside me finally settling. "Protection without honesty is destruction," I said, "and the cost of silence can be higher than the risk we fear." We sat together in that quiet room, letting the weight of what had happened sink in. The city began to move again. News vans packed up, investigations proceeded, the first dominoes had fallen, and more would follow. But inside the house, something shifted. A fragile understanding returned. Not perfect, not complete, but something stronger than before. Awareness, vigilance, respect. I didn't get my workshop back that week. I didn't need it, not yet. Because what mattered most wasn't the tools. It was the knowledge, the skill, the patience, and the resolve that no one could take away. I walked through the house that evening, the nursery, the empty crib, The spaces that had once been filled with lies and fear now felt different. Not safe, not exactly peaceful, but honest. I looked at my daughter. "You survived fear," I said, "and that makes you stronger than you realize." She nodded, and for the first time in months, she smiled. I looked at my wife. "We rebuild from this," I said, "but only if we're honest, only if we're ready to face the truth." And then I finally understood something I hadn't before. A craftsman isn't defined by the tools he uses. He's defined by what he builds with his mind, his hands, and his heart. Betrayal can break trust. Betrayal can take lives. Betrayal can erase rooms, tools, and years. But it cannot erase knowledge, skill, or patience. It cannot erase a craftsman. And for the first time in months, I felt the weight inside me lift slightly. Because the people who tried to erase me had forgotten one fundamental truth. A true craftsman can survive anything and rebuild from nothing. From the nursery to the streets to the offices and the shell companies, they all learned the same lesson I had. Underestimate a man and you risk everything. I went to sleep that night, not as a man who had lost, but as a man who had survived, who had rebuilt, and who had finally reclaimed his life without compromise. The tools, the lies, the threats, they were all part of a story now, one that would never be forgotten, because the price of betrayal is high, and the value of patience, precision, and unwavering resolve is even higher.